I've decided this morning to head down to Burton Power. Love looking around the Burton Power shop. Into a new day, and weather-wise, it's a miserable one, unfortunately.
It's not going to allow it to come out. Bolt doesn't go through. Oh, that's going to be a loose fit in there. Oh no.
You can see how bad it is. That is ridiculous.
Oh, forgot my coolant hoses are cable tied to the anti-roll bar.
And then I pushed her back in the garage, but actually cracked. But the mole grips I used were at my other garage. Tried to undo the bolt with my gun, which didn't work. Another tool I forgot to grab from my other garage was bolts. Did get chewed
Definitely not a method I would advise anyone use. Hello and welcome to this video. I'm Marcus Hayes, and today you join me from the cockpit of my beautiful girlfriend Kat's plastic Ford Fiesta that she likes to call Roger. If you've been watching my videos, you'll know that I recently ordered some bushes for Maude, my moredoor Mk2 Escort, or should I say, I thought I'd ordered some bushes for Maude, because yesterday, thinking to myself that they should have been delivered by now, I started having a look at my emails and stuff, and as it turns out, the bushes were still in my cart on the Burton Power website. Now, if you watched the last video, you'll know that the bushes are the least of my problems with Maude at the moment. That's got to be head gaskets, surely. But regardless, I've decided this morning to get up super early and head down to Burton Power to pick up the bushes in person. And while I'm down there, I'm also going to pick up some valve stem seals so that Chris at CLUMPFAB can refurbish Maude's cylinder head as soon as I get it off, and then I'll be able to get it fitted back to the engine and hopefully get Maude up and running as soon as I can. Now, the Burton Power shop is actually quite an awesome place to visit. They've got loads of cool stuff in their sort of showroom area. And yeah, I think this is the first time I've been down there since all the madness that was going on in the world for the last couple of years. So yeah, I thought I'd take you guys along with me and wave my camera about in the shop while I'm there. So yeah, I'll pick this video up when we get down to Burton Power. Absolutely love looking around the Burton Power shop with all the engines on the stands and stuff, and really cool bunch of lads that work in Burton Power as well. I will of course leave a link to the Burton Power website in the description for any of you guys that need any parts. But I will say, if you get an opportunity to come down here and have a look around the shop, it's well worth it.
So here is my parts haul. I've got 16 of the valve stem seals, which I'll be giving to Chris when I give him my cylinder head. And I've got a couple of sets of bushes. So these are the anti-tramp bar bushes where they meet the axle. They're actually the same bushes as the inner bushes in the track control arms on a Mark 1 and Mark 2 Escort. Although on my cars, I don't have a bush on the inner bit because I've got rose joints. And then I've got a set of the outer track control arm bushes. This is where the anti-roll bar meets the track control arms. And yeah, these were the ones that I found weren't located correctly into the track control arm when I got Maude aligned recently. Now, I've actually gone for the PowerFlex Black series for both of these bushes, and these are a bit stiffer than the purple PowerFlex bushes. Anyway, I need to get myself back through the traffic now and get home. It's actually a gym day for me and my beautiful girlfriend Kat today, but I'll be continuing this video tomorrow when I'll be cracking on with fitting these bushes and hopefully tearing apart Maude's engine. So I'll see you in a sec. Hello, into a new day, and weather-wise, it's a miserable one, unfortunately. Now, I've already got Maude's rear end jacked up, and I'm using some wood to chock the front wheels. I've actually got the shell on axle stands rather than the axle, although I have still got the jack under the axle for safety. And what I'm going to be cracking on with first today is replacing the bushes that go here between the anti-tramp bar and the axle. As I mentioned in the last video, or was it the video before, I basically got a chisel or a bar in here and levered, and yeah, there's loads of movement in this joint. We'll undo the one where the tramp bar meets the chassis first. It's a 19mm. And the one on the axle is a 16. Perfect opportunity to use my new favourite tool. Bracket's not going to allow it to come out, so I'll have to take the bar off completely. It should just pull off. The other half of the bush must be under the car somewhere, along with the metal sleeve that goes in the middle. Yeah, it seemed like the play was in the centre. Now, I don't think it'll be between the bolt and the sleeve. I suppose there is a bit of movement there. Maybe it was that, or if not, it's probably more likely to be the actual bush itself. You can see there. Yeah, but either way, this was definitely allowing movement, and it shouldn't. This all still looks okay, no cracks in it or anything. This other end still does look really good, luckily. Right, so we're going to throw in the Black Series Powerflex bushes. Keep 2 of these and 1 of these sleeves for the other side. The kit comes with this assembly lube. Squeeze a little bit of that into each one of these bushes. Because these are in 2 halves, these are really easy to install. The original rubber ones, they're actually not like this, and you have to basically force them in with a press. But yeah, these ones, simple as that. In goes the second one, and we'll put a little bit of this on the pin as well, why not? Or sleeve, should I say, it's not a pin. And then we'll press that in there. Bush is in, so let's get this bar attached back to the car. Alright, so I've just noticed something. The bolt that I've got that holds the anti-tramp bar to the axle doesn't go through this metal sleeve. And that is because this bolt is thicker than the genuine Ford bolt that you would use for a genuine Ford RS2000 anti-tramp bar. So that means I've got no choice but to use this metal sleeve from the old bushes. And yeah, I just hope that it's not this that's worn. I have to take this sleeve back out. Hope I can get it out. Oh, and that's going to be a loose fit in there. Oh no. Damn. So I guess the answer then is going to be to drill this out to accept this bolt. Luckily, there's loads of thickness on this tube to be able to do that. Doesn't have to be drilled out much at all. Now, I'm not going to try and do this myself. I think this would be better done on a pillar drill, so you can make sure that it goes, nice and straight through there, rather than me trying to hold this and hold a drill and expect it to go through straight. So yeah, I'm going to have to leave this for the professionals, I think. Alright, so next up, going to be replacing the bushes that go here, where the anti-roll bar meets the track control arm. If you've been watching my videos, you'll know that when we got this car aligned, I realised that these bushes weren't located correctly in the track control arms. We did try and loosen the anti-roll bar that day and try and pop them back in, but yeah, when we done the nut back up, which is on the back of here, which you can see there, yeah, the bush just kept popping out. I mean, you can see how bad it is. I mean, that is ridiculous. Now, I did actually try and reuse these bushes when I replaced these track control arms recently, and yeah, I shouldn't have done that. Now, this is really simple. I'm just going to need to remove the anti-roll bar. So you've got these nuts either side, and I've got the 4 bolts that hold the anti-roll bar clamps on each side, because this has got a double width kit. Apart from one that still has a stud and nut in it, yeah, this thread in the bracket I had to re-tap to M12. But yeah, once all those nuts and bolts are undone, I'll be able to pull the anti-roll bar off and then just refit it with the new bushes. Oh, forgot my coolant hoses are cable tied to the anti-roll bar. Alright, so the way this sits on the car is you've got a washer here and then one half of the bush there. Then it goes through the track control arm and then you've got the other half of the bush, another washer, and then the castellated nut, like that. Oh yeah, I forgot to mention there's a metal sleeve in there as well. These look a bit narrower than the others, which isn't necessarily a problem. There you get the washers, nuts, which are actually nylocks, so actually no need to have a split pin with this kit, and the metal sleeves are in there as well. So, take all this back off. This kit also obviously comes with the assembly lube as well, so first of all, throw a load of this on here, so that goes that way. Just check that these are the same. Yeah, all 4 pieces look identical, whereas with the old set, there's sort of 2 different halves. That'll go on there like that. Need the metal sleeve on there as well. I suppose we should grease that up. Just make sure this is all the way in. And then the rest can go on once we've actually fitted the anti-roll bar.
Getting the anti-roll bar back into both of the track control arms was a bit tricky. I had to put one side in and then use brute force to get the other side in.
Yes. Yes. We'll put a load of the grease in there.
With the anti-roll bar fully back in position though, I was able to stack the other half of the poly bush, the other washer and the nylock nut onto each end of the anti-roll bar. But I left the nuts loose. I then bolted the front of the anti-roll bar back up with the clamps, again leaving the bolts loose for the time being.
I'm just going to do up these nylocks and then undo them again. And I've already done that on the other side, because apparently with, you know, these anti-roll bars, you're supposed to torque them up with the weight of the car on the ground and the wheels facing forward. So yeah, I'll just wind it in to pull it all in where it's supposed to be, then loosen it back off again. And then what I'll do is I'll lower the car down, do up all those nuts and bolts so they're tight, then jack it back up to make sure they're actually at the right torque. Although I can't remember the exact torque that they're supposed to be. But anyway, it's around 30 foot-pounds, I think.
With the poly bushes fully installed, I got Maude back on the ground and then drained her coolant, and then I pushed her back in the garage. It was time to dive into the cylinder head removal, and the first thing I wanted to do was crack off the crank pulley bolt. So with the ratchet leaning against the radiator outlet, I turned the engine over on the starter motor for a split second and the bolt was cracked off. Then I disconnected the battery, disconnected the throttle position sensor, undone the bike carbs Jubilee clips and stabiliser brace, unhooked the rocker cover breather, disconnected the cam sensor and pulled the carbs off the manifold. Into another wet day, and the first thing I did was remove the radiator. Then I slackened off and removed the alternator belt, which enabled me to push the alternator out of the way. Then I removed the water pump pulley, the alternator belt idler pulley, the front cover, which is the engine mount in the focuses. Then I removed the crank pulley and the plastic behind it. Next up, I slackened the bolts on the exhaust cam vernier pulley, set the pulley back to 0 and nipped the bolts back up. And this is so that we can use the timing tools later on to get the engine to TDC. Next to come off was the inlet manifold, along with the coil pack and the bike carb brace. And then, round the other side of the engine, I moved the washer bottle out of the way so that I could set about removing the exhaust manifold. Next, I removed the ground wire, the engine lifting eye and the manifold studs. Back around the other side of the engine, I removed cam sensor, inlet manifold studs and the other engine lifting eye. Then it was time to dive into the top of the engine, so I removed the rocker cover and whipped out the spark plugs, 2 of which were actually cracked. And then I turned the engine over by hand until the timing bar went in the back of the cam, because I wanted to get the engine to TDC. With the timing bar removed again, it was time to crack off the pulleys for the camshafts, but the mole grips I used to stop the cam spinning were at my other garage. I tried to undo the bolt with my gun, which didn't work, so I resorted to using a chisel to lock the cams in place whilst I crack off the pulley bolts, which to my surprise actually worked. Next, I removed the cam belt tensioner pulley and the guide pulley, and also removed the cam belt itself. Another tool I forgot to grab from my other garage was the female torque socket to undo the cam cap bolts. Luckily, I was able to use a normal 8mm socket, but one of the bolts did get chewed up. So I had to force a 7mm socket onto it to remove that bolt, which luckily did work. With the cam cap bolts all removed, I was able to remove the cam caps themselves, ensuring that I kept them all in the correct order, and then out came the camshafts. All I had to do then was remove the cylinder head bolts themselves, so I cracked them off with a bar, starting in the middle, working my way out, finished them off with a gun, and then removed them with a magnetic screwdriver. I was able to pull the cylinder head off the bottom end really easily, and then I sprayed a whole can of brake cleaner at it to get rid of the majority of the milky oil.
Alright, so I managed to get Maude's cylinder head removed without too much trouble. I did have a little bit of an issue where I didn't have my big spanner or mole grips to actually grip the cams here to crack off the pulleys, but I was able to jam a chisel in there and sort of lean it against the head. Definitely not a method I would advise anyone use if you can help it, but luckily it did work for me this time. I also forgot to bring the female Torx socket around from my other garage to take these cam caps off. Now you can use an 8mm socket, which is exactly what I did, but as you would have seen, the one that goes here did actually get rounded off, and I ended up having to bang a 7mm socket onto it to get that bolt out. I do have another set of these bolts on the cylinder head that I recently removed from INSTA, so yeah, I won't be reusing these bolts. I have put all the cam caps back into the head just to make sure that they're still in the correct order. They have to go back in the same order that they've come off, and I've put these carrier bags on here just so that the buckets here stay in their correct positions, because they need to stay in the same place as well. And one thing to mention about the cylinder head that I recently removed from INSTA, a lot of you guys were saying in the comments of the last video, why don't I fit that cylinder head to Maude? Well, I'll actually be taking the 2 cylinder heads down to CLUMPFAB, just in case this one's cracked. And yeah, Chris can choose the best one to refurbish, because I think it's sensible to, you know, at least get the head skimmed before I fit the new head gasket, you know, because if it's warped, the head gasket's going to blow anyway. And a lot of you were saying, why don't I go for a ported cylinder head like I fitted to INSTA recently? Well, that is actually something that I am planning to do in the future, but right now I just need to get the car back together in time for a drift day at the end of this month. So I didn't want to go with a ported cylinder head now, because I would have had to wait for the cylinder head to be ported, then I would have had to send the car to the dyno. So yeah, I just decided that I'll get a refurbished stock head to get the car back together ready for the drift day. Now I have thrown a whole can of brake cleaner at this cylinder head, but I haven't actually looked at the underside of it yet. Now that the carrier bags are stopping the buckets falling out, I can actually turn it up, and yeah, all the valves are present and correct. No visible damage to any of those, although you can clearly see that this cylinder, and potentially this cylinder as well, has been burning water. You can see a rust colour in there, but yeah, other than that, those valves look like they will clean up, and Chris at CLUMPFAB will of course relap those back in so they seal perfectly, and yeah, this face will get a very light skim just to ensure that it's perfectly flat. Let's have a look at the bottom end. Now, one good thing about Maude's setup is that I'm actually able to leave the exhaust system all connected and just remove the manifold out of the way, unlike with INSTA, because the battery tray actually prevents me from pulling the manifold off the engine without first disconnecting the exhaust system. But yeah, in terms of the bottom end, it actually looks pretty good. I'm not going to say that the walls of the cylinders are great. Definitely a bit glazed, but no big chunks out of them or anything. And yeah, the pistons definitely look in good shape. No holes in them. So yeah, this should be absolutely fine to go back together. Obviously, in an ideal world, I would have the bottom end stripped and have the block skimmed to make sure that's flat, but we don't live in an ideal world. Yeah, definitely see a rusty colour around the firing ring part of the gasket on that cylinder. Although, to be fair, in general, there is just rust colour everywhere. But yeah, at least the gasket came off in one piece. I am of course going to need to thoroughly clean this block face before I put this car back together. But yeah, I think I'll crack on with that another day off camera. And unfortunately, I don't have any power around at this garage, and I don't have a generator here either. And my house is a little bit of a walk away. But yeah, I might end up having to push Maude round to my house to hoover out the cylinders and stuff after I've cleaned the block face, just to make sure there's no debris in there. Another thing I want to do before this car goes back together is just take these covers off the bottom of these bike carbs and just take the jets out and, you know, clean those out, yeah, while it's apart, because these covers are on the underside of the bike carbs. Yeah, it's a nightmare to get the jets out and stuff whilst they're bolted to the engine. And I suppose it'd be rude not to give the block and stuff a bit of a clean whilst it's all apart as well. Now, all that can wait for another day. What I'm going to do now is remove the water rail and then give the head another quick clean. I will be taking the cams to CLUMPFAB with me as well, because I'm pretty sure that Chris should be able to check the valve clearances for me. I think, I'm sure he'll be able to let me know if he is able to do that while the head's off of the engine. But yeah, let's get this stuff ready to take to CLUMPFAB. These are such a poor design, these water rails, because if you ever have to change the thermostat, you pretty much have to remove the engine or lower it down enough to get the water rail off. Alright, so we've got one cylinder head and a pair of cams wrapped up and ready to take to CLUMPFAB, and we've got brand new valve stem seals that I got from my friends at Burton Power. We've got one moredoor Mk2 Escort engine bay that looks like a bomb has hit it, and we've got a box of parts and bolts. So I'm going to have a bit of a tidy up round here, and then I'll see you at home in a sec. Alright, so back at home in the dry, and I'm so glad that I managed to get Maude's cylinder head removed today, and I'm really glad that the bottom end looks absolutely fine. So yeah, once we get the cylinder head refurbished, bang on a new head gasket and new head bolts, she'll be back running probably better than she ever has. Really unfortunate about the anti-tramp bar bushes, but as I've got an aftermarket anti-tramp bar kit on Maude, these things can happen, you know, with aftermarket parts, and Chris Kember at CLUMPFAB will easily be able to drill out those sleeves for me. So yeah, I'll be able to fit those bushes on the car very soon. And yeah, with her engine in bits at the moment, it's definitely not top of my list of priorities. Now, apologies to anyone who's thinking this is a bit repetitive, because, you know, I recently removed and replaced the cylinder head on INSTA, my Mk2 Escort, and now I'm having to do the same thing again on Maude. But on the other hand, I know there's loads of you guys out there that do appreciate the regular content, regardless of what I get up to. So yeah, massive thanks to each and every one of you for regularly tuning in. I really, really appreciate all your support. If you do want a bit of variety, in the next video, we're of course going to be going to see Chris Kember at CLUMPFAB, who is an absolute genius when it comes to welding and fabrication and restoration. I guarantee there's going to be at least a few old school Escorts in his workshop to check out, a couple of which I think we've seen before because they're ongoing long-term projects. But yeah, either way, I'm really looking forward to getting down to CLUMPFAB and catching up with Chris and checking out what he has been up to. So for now, I'm going to end this video here. If you did think it was any good, please do give it a thumbs up and a share. If you didn't, give it a thumbs down. Click subscribe if you're new to keep up to date with all my future uploads, and check the links in the description to my social media, my own website. I'll leave a link to my Patreon down there for any of you guys that want to jump on that. Massive, massive thanks to all my patrons for your ongoing support. I'll leave my email address in the description for anyone who wants to contact me. But other than that, until next time, thanks for watching.